Hi, I'm Sully Erna from Godsmack. You know, it's funny, when you're a young band and you're kind of up and coming and you're playing, the empty clubs at first, and then you move into packed clubs, and then it goes up to theaters. You're always looking for that next step, that next stage. And I remember my old manager, Paul Geary, told me at one point, because I was always like, I just can't wait to get my first tour bus. And then, you get your first tour bus, and then you go like, just can't wait until the clubs sell out. And then the clubs sell, and you go, man, but when we get to theaters, then we can put on a little bit bigger of a show. And then you get to theaters, and then you go, man, but when you get to an arena, now we're gonna have made it. And at one point he goes, Sully, you're gonna miss the whole ride. Like, just slow down and stop and just kind of appreciate what's going on. And it's hard to do that when you're younger because you're playing on these tiny little stages and you're calling and bitching like, we can't even fit the drums and a vocal mic on the stage. But I think those are the things that I appreciate the most looking back is, the days when we just had a line out the club and we were really starting to make a name for ourselves, but we were just too busy and engaged in it to realize that the buzz was happening and we were the new thing in town. So I love those memories. I love looking back at that and remembering, how hard we worked and how cool it was to be the new cool band. My drums were definitely my first instrument. I started playing when I was 3 years old, and by the time I was 3.5, I was taking legitimate lessons, and I just never quit. I never bailed on it. Not everyone thought I knew what I was talking about when you're 12, 13 years old and you want to quit school to be a musician. They all think you're crazy, and of course parenting, trying to do the right thing. But I don't know, I was blessed at a very young age to have a talent that was able to get me through my life, through the tough times on the streets, to be able to keep me out of trouble. I got into quite a bit of trouble, but I think during the really dark times when some of my friends ended up either dead and in jail, it was the drums and music in general that saved my life and gave me a path, gave me an outlet to pursue. It's one of those things that when you're young, it's hard to convince your parents and stuff that like, this is what I'm gonna do for a living. And I get it, they're trying to be protective, but thankfully it worked out good. My mom was always supportive. My dad supported me as well, but he comes from a little bit older school of a background. He was born and raised in Sicily, Italy. He's very old-fashioned. And of course, again, being a very young parent, I think back now and I could sit here and tell you, how bad of a dad he was when I was growing up and how, mean he was or intimidating. And the same guy, him being a musician his whole life, he's still a musician. He's a trumpet player. He owns the Northeast Italian band that does all the Italian feasts in New England. And, the feasts when they bring in the saints and they pin money up on them and all that stuff. He's the band that services all those feasts. And I just always had a hard time in a relationship with him when I was younger because he's the guy that influenced me to want to be a musician and watching his band in the basement when I was 3.5 years old, to the same guy that was like very aggressive when he was telling me that it shouldn't be, music's supposed to be a hobby and you need to work hard and finish school and things like that. And so it created a lot of animosity with me and him. But he's also the same guy that I got to hand a big bag of I told you so's to later when things worked out. So he wasn't wrong for being how he was, but it's hard for a young kid to accept that. I gotta tell you, I'd be pretty psyched. And I always tell her she's got some amazing gifts. Skylar is really a special personality. I don't believe we chose to have a baby at one point, me and my ex-Jen. I think Skylar chose to have us as parents. Because Jen's a pretty young, cool, hip mom, and I'm a musician, rock star, whatever you want to call it, and I love that Skylar's getting to that age now. She's almost 13, where she's starting to really see who her dad is and what I do. And she's got a lot of talent. I put her on a piano and within 5 minutes she knows how to play an Adele song. She's also starting to discover her voice right now and getting a lot better at it. Whether or not she wants to pursue, acting or entertainment or music in general is something that she's going to have to decide. I wouldn't want to push her into that. Because I don't want her to feel intimidated, but at the same time, if she wanted to, I would support her 100%, and I would make sure I gave her the best advice and help that I could to get her to where she would like to go. If I had to target my biggest Spinal Tap moment, the one that comes to mind immediately is when we were going on tour for our third album, Faceless. me and Shannon decided to ramp up the drum solo. And we built this amazing stage where it had this whole garage behind, Shannon was here and there was this big garage behind him. And then my drum set came up out of the garage and his rolled down stage. But we found that it was very impersonal because he'd be facing the audience and I'd be up above him. And so it wasn't working. There was no eye contact and there was no battle. So we decided to build this big iron cylinder and we put it in the middle of the audience. And we thought this could be really rad, where Shannon's drum kit moves downstage, and then from the middle of the audience, I rise up out of this big cylinder and we do the drum battle. And the idea was great, and it worked great visually. But the sound we were having a problem with to balance it because I was so far away. But the Spinal Tap moment came one show when it was time to do the drum solo, and during this little instrumental part, I would disappear beneath the stage and I would take this bat cave to the cylinder so no one seen me get in that part. And when it was time to come up, the drum set started coming up and the floor that was on tilted. And so just the cymbals were sticking out of this big can and the drum solo had started and I'm stuck. And so all you could see was my hands, the drumsticks flailing around with a couple of crooked cymbals, and the drum set never got up to, level off at the top of the cylinder. And so it was just a very awkward moment, and I could hear people banging it with pipes and stuff. And finally, the drum solo's over and you see the few cymbals and go away, and that was pretty bad Spinal Tap moment for us. I do like playing radio festival tours, and the band just likes playing. That's really the reward. The writing and the recording process is so tedious, especially the mixing part of it, which I just finished. Man, it's just really tedious work. It's something I used to enjoy a lot more when I was younger. As I get older, it's kind of like the tolerance that I have for getting a tattoo. I could sit there for 8 hours, and just, it didn't matter. Now it's I'm like, ow, this hurts, and I don't even want to sit there for an hour. And it's kind of the same thing. I just don't enjoy some of the process as much as I used to. But the reward at the end is also beautiful because you get this finished product that you can stick in your back pocket and slam in your CD player when you get home and hear all the months of blood and sweat that you put into this album. But more importantly, the real reward happens when we play live. And so whether it be a radio festival, our own tour, special events kind of thing, I think that's what the band looks forward to the most, is just being able to get on stage and play for the people. I got a call from a good friend of mine, Tom DiNucci, and he was working on a script that he had called Army of the Damned. And he's someone that I'd spoke to a while back when I had done my autobiography, and he wanted to try to make possibly a movie out of that. So he's this young up-and-coming writer-director. He said, I have this role, and I really think you should come and read with me for it because I kind of sculpted it and tailored it around you and your personality, and it would be the lead. And I said, okay, I really have enjoyed acting, and I'm trying to do it more and more, and I think it's really fun. But he said, you're going to play the role of a cop. And I'm like, you sure you remember what I look like? Because I don't look like a cop. And he goes, no, this is going to be he's a cool guy. He's like a Bruce Willis in Die Hard. He's he comes from the city, and he has an edge to him because he was on Vice and Narcotics and whatever. And now he's come back to the small town where he's honoring his dad's legacy by taking over sheriff, which his dad was once before his dad passed away. And in the movie, it's a very quiet town that this reality show is filming cops, and all hell breaks loose when all the supernatural stuff starts happening. And it kind of came off as more of an underground indie horror comedy more than a horror action. So there was some good action in it, there's some good gore in it, and there's definitely a lot of little comedy bits. But all in all, it was fun making it. It was a good experience, and it gave me an opportunity to take on a lead role too. So it was good to know that I could take the weight of a lead on, for future projects hopefully to come up. Yeah, there's always time. It depends on what it is, and I'm constantly auditioning and doing stuff for readings and things like that. It's just about what I land, and even if it's a small part in a big movie, to me it's good for the acting reel and something I'd like to continue to do. Well, the solo stuff, I'm always working on material. I sit home when I'm home, and the only thing I keep in my house is a drum set, an acoustic guitar, and a piano. I never really play electric when I'm home, and because of that, whenever I'm noodling around, a lot of good ideas come up, and they're not always necessarily good for Godsmack. So I tuck those away, and so. For sure, I'll do another solo album at some point. I don't know if it'll be, another Avalon, because I'm still debating on, who I'm going to use for the project. It's one of those things that kind of stuff, I never want to have a ceiling over my head. I never want to have a leash on. I never want to have to follow a certain format. Godsmack has built our career, and we've kind of identified now what we sound like and what we're supposed to do in this industry. And even though we like to stretch out a little bit and experiment with some new textures and colors, which you'll hear on the new record, it's still, we kind of know where our place is in that world. With the solo stuff, I don't ever want to have that kind of limitations, because I think it's the place I'd like to go one day when this is all said and done. If I still want to play music, I can sit up on stage with a piano or an acoustic and do more of a storyteller's kind of evening, and just kind of live on more like a Billy Joel would, where it's just a little bit of whatever you want to write, and there's no specific category for it. I don't know. That's a question that I've been asked quite a bit. What I would do if I wasn't successful with Godsmack. It's a hard question to answer, because the only thing I can think of is I would still be back in the slummiest parts of where I grew up, doing every kind of job I could possibly think of. From carpet installation to scrubbing the underbellies of planes, which lasted about 45 minutes, by the way. Totally quit at lunch. Or doing collections for an attorney. I mean, one of the things that got me, a pretty good job right before Godsmack got signed was just having street smarts and being able to bullshit people into paying their bills. And so I got a great job doing collections. And it paid fairly well for someone with not that much of an education. So who knows if I'd still be doing something like that and being stressed out and half bald by now. But, thankfully, all the hard work I put into music, which I did put in the most work, and dedicated my whole life to it, and sacrificed family and friends and relationships and education and everything else that I always put music first. Thankfully, it paid off and I didn't have to worry about it. Yeah, well, the fans are first priority always with us, and it's the reason why this band continues to get back together. What they give us, their energy and their love and support over the years is what's kept this band young and healthy and wanting to work as hard as we do, because truly that's the reward at the end of the day, is to go out and play this music and put on a show for the fans, and see them come to a really happy place. Even if it's for that hour and a half on stage, to let them go to a different place and get away from their problems is the most rewarding part of this whole thing.